creative friends, it's Gwen. Today's mission is a stash busting one. I've pulled out some pretty washi tapes and I'm going to challenge myself to use them in 10 different ways on a single scrapbook layout. This is going to be quite the challenge, but I'm up for it, so let's get started. Today I'm creating with Woodland Grove by Maggie Holmes. I have 2 photos to document and I have gone ahead and pulled out a selection of washi tape. The first way that I'll be using it is to create a page border. I love to have a frame for my layouts and generally speaking I do this with pattern paper. Today I'm going to switch it out with washi tape. To create the frame, I'll place strips of washi along each side of a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. Then simply trim the ends with a really sharp pair of scissors. This idea uses a bunch of washi tape all in one go and is a great way to use up some of the pattern papers in your stash that you don't love. Keep in mind though, while you are totally covering up that pattern paper, you may be able to see some of the elements through the washi tape, especially if you're using tape that is of a really light color. So choose your paper wisely. To finish the background, you'll need a 12 by 12 sheet of pattern paper and I'll trim 1/2 inch off of 2 sides. Center this piece onto your background and then stitch around the edge for added detail. With the background sorted, I am going to start on my paper layers and I'm going to use this very pretty grid design. I'm not sure if you noticed, but I actually created 2 backgrounds for this layout. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to use that deeper green grid background or go with something lighter. Which one would you have chosen? I'm sure you've seen that I did go with the lighter, and that's because I want to add some mixed media here. I will get to that later. First up, I need to get some more washi on this page. The second way I'm going to do that is by creating a photo mat. This is indeed a very similar technique to the one we just did, but this time I'm creating a mat for my photo. This tape is super pale pink and you know what? It's not the best quality tape, so I have gone with a white cardstock. I'm going to run it around all 4 sides and you might notice that I'm not overlapping the washi this time over onto the back side of the paper. This time I'm actually just lining up the edge of the washi with the edge of the cardstock. You can do it either way. I prefer to wrap the washi over the edge when I can, so if I'm working with a wider washi tape, but that is a little bit trickier to do if you're working with a thin one. Here's what that looks like. I'm going to place my photo over the top. I'm then going to run this through my sewing machine and add a stitched detail. And that brings me to the third way I'll be using washi on this layout, and that is to secure my machine stitching. I do a lot of stitching on my pages and this is my favorite way to secure that stitching. If I ever see washi tape on sale, I will grab it, especially for this use. I am starting to pull elements together and I am actually going to build this layout a little bit differently than my normal process because I know I want to use some mixed media at the end. For now, I'll keep all of the paper layers separate from the background. It's time to add more washi. This time, I'm going to use it as an extra detail within my paper layers. This particular one is super pretty. Those hearts are like gold foiled, and I am just going to use it as an extra little detail. I love that you can add it into paper layers without adding bulk. Next up, I'm going to use washi to help me create this cute little pocket. This started out just as a little journaling card. I have attached it to a long strip of white cardstock, folded that in half, and then added a circle punch to create a tab. I've then used the washi to seal the edges and create a pocket. I am going to cut a tag to fit inside, and that will be a lovely spot for some hidden journaling. I will have to trim it ever so slightly so that it easily slides in and out of the pocket. I'm a big fan of hidden journaling, especially as someone who shares a lot of their layouts online. I know I am working a little bit differently today, but trust me, all of these individual components will come together. I am feeling low on paper layers here, and I did find this really pretty scallop print. So it's time to fussy cut out that edge and we'll add it into our paper stack. And that brings me to the next way I'll be using washi tape on this layout, and that is to secure elements as I go. I like to have the option to change my mind as I'm creating. So washi is a great way to attach things or secure things, but still have the option to move them. I tend to use it mostly as I'm stacking my paper layers. For smaller embellishments, I prefer to use my ATG tape because that is repositionable as well. If you're ever looking for any of the supplies that I love, the things I use on every single layout, there are links in the description box below. It's time to build out the clusters for the layout, and I am going with two. The main cluster will be a floral one in that bottom right hand corner, and I will balance that out with a smaller cluster in the top left hand corner. Things are getting serious because I'm gluing stuff down. I am going to lock into position some of these larger elements. Remember the scallops I mentioned earlier? I'm going to team them with this idea. Did you know that you can use your washi tape with punches? I've just laid a strip down on a piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to use my tab punch and punch all along the edge. I am going to punch out quite a few of these. I want to add them in a way that creates a textural element for the page. I'm going to position these three first and attach them with the smallest amount of liquid glue. You can see down the bottom too that they're overlapping the edge of the paper there and onto the scallops. I've then run that row through my sewing machine, and I'm going to add in a second row here now. To help the layout feel put together, choose the same washi tape for this technique as you used on the layout frame. I have lost a little bit of the look of the scallops, so I am going to add a second row of them down further on the page. You can see now that I have that repeating pattern and that textural element that's happening down the bottom there. I am going to attach it with a liquid adhesive, and I am being careful because remember, all of this top section is not attached to my background yet. Time for more washi. This time I want to customize embellishments. This wooden heart needs something a little bit extra, so I'll run the washi down one side and then trim off the excess with my fussy cutting scissors. Isn't that cute? You can even add glossy accents on top if you like. I'm also going to add washi to the journaling tag. This is an extra detail that will tie this element back to the main layout. While you won't see it when you first look at the page, it is a lovely little touch for those people who are reading the journaling. I've just run the tape along one side and then trimmed off the excess with my scissors. I have also run it through my sewing machine for an extra little detail. I will trim some of the threads, but I will leave some because I really like that vintage look. That is the last of the large elements sorted for the page. I can now move on to the medium-sized embellishments, starting with this really cute foam element. I'm happy with the position of the wooden heart, so I'll lock that into place as well. It's usually at this point in the layout that I want to have a look at the color balance for the page. See how on the left there I'm missing a touch of green? Well, washi to the rescue. I'm going to add a very small piece here to help me balance out that green color. I now have a bit of a visual triangle happening with my pops of green on the page. I am going to add a leaf to that top cluster, and that will also help with that. You'll see that here in a moment. I'd love to know, how many rolls of washi tape do you have in your stash? I'm guessing quite a few, seeming you're watching this video. Let me know in the comments below. It's time for some mixed media, and I'm going to get the washi to help me hold my stencil in place. I'm not super confident when using inks and mixed media supplies, so it is nice to have the security of a taped down stencil, and washi's really good for that. It's great to be able to position the stencil exactly where I want it, add a little bit of mixed media, and then be able to lift it up. I also love adding the mixed media last. I know exactly where it needs to be placed in relation to the elements I've already built for the page. See how I can audition that whole top section over the top of my mixed media. The washi tape is repositionable, so it's really good if you need to move the stencil as you go. With that all sorted, I can now add the top section of the layout onto my background. It's now time to add in the leaves that I talked about earlier. I didn't want to add them until after I had placed that mixed media. A great way to get balance on your page is to repeat elements in your clusters. So I am going to add some leaves in the bottom right hand corner, and I will replicate that with some leaves up the top there on the left. And can you see now how that balances out the green? I have the 2 points of green on the left top and then the green tag and the green elements down the bottom. Oh yes, and I did have this leftover little tab punch and I thought, you know what, let's add that as a little detail on the right there. I have one more detail to add. This page already has a bow, but it does not have a butterfly. I found this one on the sticker sheet and I'm actually going to place it right there. I want to share some close-up images with you so you can see all of the details. If you like the way that I scrapbook or the way that I chat about the way that I scrapbook, I would love it if you give this video a thumbs up. I initially thought finding 10 ways to use washi on a single page might be tricky, but it wasn't as hard as I thought, and I really love how this turned out. Do you need even more ways to use up your washi tape stash? In this video, I share a bunch of very practical ideas that I know you will love. So be sure to check that out, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye.